welcome back, everybody, to Learn Piano Live. Of course, I'm Jamin, and today I'm very excited to have with us a guest that I've been teasing for forever, and he's finally here with us. The performer, musician, songwriter. He's on TV. He's everywhere. He's Bradley Paul Clark. He's actually the voice of Penguin and Floaty as well. Bradley, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So we've got a long list of questions from the students, so I'm just going to jump right in. And
Great.
feel free to answer as short or long as you want. This is
Okay.
pre-recorded, everybody, so we're not actually live right now. Don't put your questions in the chat room. Go ahead and send those in if you have additional questions, and hopefully we can tag Bradley for
We
those
could.
a little bit later.
I just go in the chat room, answer them.
That's right. He'll be there. He'll be here 24/7 just to answer your
24 hours a
questions
day.
in the chat. All right, so,
That's right.
so the first one is remembering back to earlier in your career. What advice did you get that really sticks out?
I think the biggest piece of advice I got was to try to find my own voice. Because when we're starting out, a lot of times we're playing music and we're doing things that it's what's inspired us, right?
Right.
So I grew up around, Motown and because modern music when I was growing up wasn't cool, like, right? So
Right.
we went back into the 50s, the 60s, 70s. And so I was really heavily influenced by gospel music. I was heavily influenced by Motown and
Can you give me some names?
oh goodness, Percy Sledge, Elvis Presley, James Brown,
Yeah. Okay.
you know, goodness, Leonard Skinner, you know,
Yeah.
it goes into, Led Zeppelin. And then, I've always loved Elvis's um, gospel albums. I always loved them. I grew up with them,
Right.
and I also grew up with a lot of harmony, because Crandall brothers are my uncles and my
Mm.
mom and everything else. And she's a gospel singer too. So I had a lot of influences, but I was struggling for so long to find my own voice. And I think that's true whether it's in business, whether it's in music as you begin your careers. You gotta find your own voice. We're influenced by so many things, but at the end of the day, it's our voice and it's our fingers on the guitar. It's our fingers, our souls going into the piano, into that song. Find your own voice, and it takes some time, you know. But the one thing that I wish I would have listened to more is, you don't need this awful life experience in order to be a good musician or
Right.
have some sort of a testimony or a soul. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You keep going, find your voice, and tell your story. Not somebody else's story or somebody's story that they think you should.
Right.
Tell your story. So I think that was the best piece of advice I ever got. And it wasn't until later that I really incorporated it and really found out what that really meant. So
Right.
the earlier you find it out, the better.
So then maybe give us some advice on how do you find that, especially if you don't have a deep well of terrible experience to you don't have some pressing voice that you feel like you're needing to share.
Well, I think that in anyone's walk in life, you have triumphs and you have tragedies. Oftentimes, we focus on the tragedies rather than the triumphs, right?
Right.
Even in the day and age we're living in, where we participation awards and stuff like that.
Right.
Look, we all have things that have hurt us, but we've also been in situations where it was we were put in a situation by a divine hand, the way I like to call it, the way I see it, and that hand had you in the path of someone that needed help at the time, whatever that is, helping somebody across the street, helping somebody move, whatever, we were put in somebody's path to be of a blessing and of service. I think one thing that this country right now, and we're at such a precipice, the whole ask not what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. What we can translate that as ask not what someone can do for you, but what you can do for someone else.
Right.
And we can use that in our storytelling. Now, here's the thing: when you're writing a song, when you're doing different things with music, you don't have to draw solely on your own experience. You can also draw on, you know, the experience of others, and what your interpretation is of it. But the more you're around people, and the more you're around situations that allow you to experience these things, it's going to bring you a more well-rounded, and it's going to shape the way your music is, and your feeling and your storytelling around it.
Right. Right. So, what are the things that you uh, most easily tell stories about personally? You.
My
What's your
goodness.
music include?
Well, what I usually tell stories about is how like Hold On, for example.
Right.
Uh, I wrote that about a girl, but really it was about me, who had sort of come out, come to this understanding that I wanted to be of service, you know, but I didn't quite understand why I didn't totally fit into the clique, right?
Right.
And so Hold On is an experience that says, you know what, when God says, I understand where you're coming from, but just hold on. I got a bigger plan for you. You know, um, I write about going to a place where, spiritually, and within my own experience, that brought me to my knees only to raise me back up. These kinds of things are really what really speak to me. For a long time, Jamin, I could never write a love song. Man, I could never write a love song. And I
Huh.
tried so desperately, and they sounded so terrible. They sounded terrible. They sounded so hokey. And I'm like, what in the world? And it wasn't until I really, I feel, experienced what love really was, that I was able to really write it. And I've written several since then
Mm.
for different artists.
Right.
Um, so sometimes you do need to experience it, but that's what I write about. You
Right.
know,
Right.
sort of triumph and tragedy, and then coming out on the other side.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. We've got several questions about the difference between the secular music scene and the Christian music
Mm,
scene.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, we have lots of opinions about that.
well, go ahead. We can edit anything out that you want to
Oh
take out.
no,
But
leave it
what?
in. I leave it in. They were marketing me as the misfit of Christian music for a long time, so
Huh.
I think and there's a freedom in that.
Right.
So I'm good, man. I'm good.
Okay. So what are some of the main differences that you see going from one to the other?
I think, for one, the idea. Somebody was talking to somebody about this very thing the other day, and he said, "Man, he's like, don't you get tired of singing about the same stuff, writing about the same stuff?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, it's always about God or this or that or whatever." And I said, "Well, okay, so what does Lionel Richie write about? What
Yeah.
what do some of the biggest names in music mostly write about? They write about love,
Right.
right? And the nuances of it, the way the twists and the turns, and in my opinion, you have different types of I don't want to say different types of music. You have different. Oh man, what am I trying to say? I think motivation plays a lot into what touches someone's heart and what doesn't.
Hmm.
And I think that sometimes when Christian artists typically uh, write about, they replace the girl's name with Jesus's name.
Right. Yeah.
I think you're missing something there,
Right.
and it might have a good beat and you can dance to it.
Right.
But I think one thing, and I'm not criticizing people.
Oh,
I'm
I
saying
am,
for
but that's
me,
good.
for me, I I've always written in a place where, well, recently, within the past 10 years, um, wrote in a place that outlined what my heart was telling me, in terms of, if this isn't gonna speak to me, it's not gonna speak to anybody.
Right.
And so, um, coming from that from that mindset and that heart set, really, I think that we as artists have to be cognizant of that. Are we trying to write a hit, or are we trying to write something that's going to, God's going to use to save somebody's life?
Right.
And that's not to say there's other songs that don't do that, because God can use anything, But I think that there's one thing that we've discounted, and if I can get Baptist-costal, it's the anointing. There's an anointing factor that's really important to have. And I think there's a lot of artists that have come up recently. I would say, what would you say, like the past 15 years, I would think,
Sure.
maybe
Yeah.
20 years, who really embody that. And they say, because you got to remember too, here's one of the main differences. When you're going out and you're playing at a crowd, and I don't care if it's 15 or 15,000, 30,000, let's say 30,000, right? 15,000 of those on average are people that came via a friend, that have no idea who you are, that have no idea what your songs are about, right? And then all of a sudden, there's a life change that happens in that person, and they puts them on the course to something better. I've had families reunite at my concerts. I've had a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things. And it's been really wonderful. But if we go on the mindset as artists that says, okay, I've been placed in a very amazing position. I get to go on a stage and make a living singing and playing and really being of service. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that there's a bigger responsibility than to just make sure that somebody gets drunk and has a great time and goes home and parties with the band.
Right.
It's a different thing. It's just completely different.
Right.
And I think as artists, we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes, because it's easy to forget.
Right.
Trust me. Oh my goodness, it's easy to forget. And then once the awards start coming in, and once the TV shows start rolling in, and once then sometimes as artists, and I'll speak for myself on that. Sometimes you get sidetracked, and at one point or another, God's going to bring you back and say, no, hold on. There's a reason why. So yeah.
Well, let me ask you on that front then too, because I know, especially starting out, there's that whole like you don't know if you should work for free or for not or charge, and then in the Christian world, it seems like there's a little bit more of if you're charging, then you're not doing it for the right reason or something, especially in the the lower levels. Like we're talking about starting out.
Yeah.
So how do you determine at those beginning stages where to charge, how much to charge, when do you bring that up, and then specifically in the Christian community, how do you tell the church that they're gonna have to pay you, or do you?
When we're starting out, we're paying our dues. We have to really be aware that sometimes the artist is not necessarily an artist yet.
Right.
And so when that happens, you have to remind yourself there's a lot of dues to be paid. There's a lot of things, and there's a lot of travel that you have to go through in your own career to get to that next level. But there is a time when those conversations should be had, and a worker is worthy of his wage. The thing of it is that the wage must be given to someone who has proven that they're worth the wage.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So then sometimes that comes with a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of blood and a lot of sweat and a lot of tears. But you get there.
Right.
You'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, let me let me ask you some other questions that are related then.
Amazing.
Because there's a lot
They're
of
throwing stress balls at me, Jamie.
well,
Crazy.
there's so you've alluded to some of your past career and stuff.
Sure.
So taking a look at like the scrapbook, at the end of the day or whatever. Maybe at the end of life, what do you look back and see as, here are my two questions in one, I guess, the accomplishments I'm most proud of, and here are the most memorable performances or favorite gigs ever?
What am I most proud of? Well, okay. I'm an Album of the Year award winner. I'm a 7-time nominee for producing, songwriting, and my own stuff. But I think what I'm most proud of That's a really good question, Jamin. And I think, but what I'm most proud of, I think, is um, all of the people that I was able to, I guess, minister to, and still able to through the music and through the recording things.
Hmm.
Um, where you know when you're going for a lot of the accolades and a lot of the stuff, that's a great thing, and I can't say that I'm not proud of that. But all that told me was that there are people that are really touched by what we were doing,
Hmm.
and now what we're continuing to do with Jason Marion and his album. There's a lot of there's 3 singles out right now and doing great on radio. He'll be up for awards next year too, and so we'll be up for more songwriting stuff and all that. But I, I think what I'm really most proud of is the fact that um, there's a lot of people that I was allowed to sing to,
Right.
and one of my most favorite gigs ever.
Ever.
Goodness gracious,
Or most memorable. It doesn't even have to be like that was your. I know you don't want to leave anybody out, but
man!
you know.
There's so many. There were so many. I remember one years ago. Years ago, I was playing the Great American Music Hall, and something happened with my band, and they got stranded somewhere. So come showtime, we were the second band up, right? And we were opening for. I'm dating myself here. We were opening for James Marsters. Do you
Okay.
remember that guy?
No.
He was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Wow. All right.
and so we were opening for him, but my band wasn't there. There was something happened on the Bay Bridge or something like that in California, and so I had to go up with a band called Callahan,
Okay.
and I guested for them, and that thing was packed. There was quite a couple 3,000, whatever capacity it is,
Yeah.
and my friend who was in the audience was the founder of Rolling Stone magazine, and he was like, "Man, you came through." I'm like, my band ain't here, but at least we did something. So that was one thing.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, the whole band, man,
That's
the whole
awesome.
band.
Yeah, no,
It
I
was crazy.
yeah, so sometimes some of the favorite memories and stuff are those where you get called up and you just like you go up,
Yeah,
especially when your expectations for yourself are extremely low because you know it's not necessarily supposed to turn out this way. So everything
right.
is a bonus. So,
I mean, it's like, what are we gonna do? What am I
yeah.
gonna do? It's a rock show, and I'm up there. What am I gonna do? Get out my acoustic guitar and start playing James Taylor? I mean,
Right.
it's crazy,
Wow.
but it was fun. It ended up being a lot of fun. They ended up getting there at some point.
To watch you. To watch
Yeah,
you
to
in one
what?
of your
Right.
most
Oh,
memorable
there he is.
performances.
Oh, doing great, buddy.
That's awesome. Well, okay, so you obviously been in music for a while. What
Yeah.
changes have you seen? We have a couple of questions specifically about YouTube and whether that and social media and stuff has changed your approach and how and what changes have you seen over the years? I'd want to leave it kind of open ended.
I remember uh, there being a. I remember there being a severe disconnect between the artist and the audience.
Hmm.
Um, and to the extent where it's like, well, how are we going to connect? Because Napster happened, and a lot of things where the I mean the artist and the it was like two separate things. Like we really love what you're doing, but maybe we don't have to pay for the songs we like.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and again, there's that other thing. Well, music should be free. Well, music is free when you play it. You know,
Right.
so um, so I think one of the things that I've seen to really bridge that has been social media, obviously. And sometimes the artist is using their publicist to put stuff out, but then other times it's very clearly the artist, right?
Hmm.
And I think that's one thing. And I think it's a good thing. I think it keeps the art honest
Hmm.
to a degree, and I think that it puts more power in the people's hands.
Hmm.
You know, uh, you really don't need a development deal anymore.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You really don't need that, because if you're doing your own development, and if by your efforts you're able to sell, however many thousands of records or whatever it is, or downloads, but then you get the power of a company behind you, then you're going to do great.
Right.
As opposed to back in the day, they would sign their Bs and then write them
Right.
off and
Right.
whatever, right?
Right.
So I think that's one thing that's changed.
Hmm.
The other things that I think I would like to see more changing, I would like to see uh, artists have more control over their publishing. I think that's one of the things, just on the business part of it.
Right.
I think that's one thing that's still lacking, and
Okay.
it's going to lack as long as we have record companies, right?
Right.
But if we can get, where does the onus come? That onus comes from the artist or from the musician or producer, you know, enhancing their skills. You know, I'll say it. Coming on to learn piano live and being a better piano player. Making sure that they're still. I still take lessons. I still take voice lessons. I still take guitar lessons. And I'm not that good of a guitar player, but I've mastered the things that I do well.
Right.
You know, so can I play Beethoven on my guitar? No, but I can play a really mean blues riff.
Right.
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 So I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then and again, just in terms of the whole social dynamic, I think that one thing that's really, really great is the power that the people have, but also if the artists are going to take charge of their own careers, then they need to really, really focus on not so much the whole I'm going to get out there and become this whoever, but how am I going to sustain this when this is gone? Because I don't
Right.
care how many millions you make, that can go very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So and then when you got a hit, just be prepared to play it for 30, 40, 50 years. Don't get tired of it.
All right. So I've heard a lot of conflicting answers to this. When you've got a hit and you go and for the 3,000th time they ask you to play that.
Yeah.
What's the feeling? Is it disgust? Is it excitement? What do you think?
I think I think part of it is, well, I mean, you remember Elvis concerts, right? And he would, no, the stage is bare and I'm standing there without any hair. You know what I mean? I played this, I sang this song. This would be the 20 millionth time I sang it.
Right.
So he'd have fun with it. But then Elvis was the kind of a guy who loved to make fun of himself,
Hmm.
right? And I think that if an artist is willing to make fun of themselves, but at the same time provide, because I don't care who you are. I don't care how big you are. You're going to have a show to where that person has never heard of you before, never heard your
Right.
music before. So it's for them. And then for the people that do love what you do, they want to hear, they want to hear the thing, and they want to feel the thing that got them to that place before. So again, it's like you got, as a musician, you have to be a professional.
Hmm.
And part of that, and as an artist, you have to be a professional. And part of being an artist is playing that song for the 2 millionth time
Right.
and realizing there's somebody out there. And here's the thing about music too. Matisse does a painting, did a painting, and I'm still admiring it to this day.
Hmm.
I look at it in books.
Right.
I'll go to wherever they're hanging them, and I just think it's wonderful. But that's done. That painting is done.
Right.
As as a musician or an artist, man, you're doing. Oh my God! You got
Right.
to remember that you're the painting,
Right.
and when somebody gets to see you live, that's really something else. So
Yeah.
I think got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember that if you want to be an artist, and if you want to be that person, then you got to be a pro,
Right. Right.
and that comes with time. That comes with time.
So along the same vein, then I know you've worked with building difference.
Yeah.
You are building a difference.
Thank you.
So tell me about what helped you get into that. What are the crossovers between music performance and what you're doing there? Tell us a little bit about the show, and maybe for someone who's just starting out, a couple tips on a couple pieces of advice for getting into performance business, whether it be music or TV or whatever.
Okay. Uh, it's really amazing kind of a story. I had done a, um, a magazine interview, and the producers of Building a Difference got a hold of it and said, we have to get this guy. And my story correlated directly with what they were, with what the show's about.
What is the show about? Can you tell us briefly?
Well, Building a Difference is a documentary TV series that spotlights individuals and organizations that are literally building a difference in their communities in order to affect the world. And the one I got in on was Building a Difference Volume 3, the story of New Life. And New Life is a rehab center started in Russia by Sergei Matavesian and brought it over to the United States in Missouri. And it's really, really neat, the way the whole thing played out. And my story correlated with that. And I love to give back in that way too. But I had done this magazine interview.
Yeah.
Producers got a hold of it, and I was like, "Wow, well, let's listen to his music." They wanted to, for me, basically to, let them use some of my music for the show. And I ended up coming out now to Missouri where we film, and I ended up getting cast on the first visit. Here's the interesting part about this whole story. When I went back to school, I didn't have cable. Well, I still don't have cable. I don't do cable, but I didn't have cable, right? So I went back to school, and this was several years ago, and the only shows in town were TBN and I think we got PBS.
Okay, that's Trinity Broadcasting Network, the Christian station.
Yeah, the Christian and the PBS. So
right.
It was either fair and balanced. So at night, around before one of my classes, around 7 or 8 o'clock at night, Building a Difference would come on, and it was Volume 1. And then sometimes when I didn't want to go to school, they would show it, and it would be first season, and it would be Building a Difference in 10 o'clock in the morning. So when I got contacted, the person didn't tell me they were with Building a Difference. His Uncle Dave, right? He didn't tell me he was with Building a Difference.
Right.
Little did he know that I used to watch this show. And I remember, I was getting my life together, and I remember watching it. And there was one episode that just really touched my heart. And it was about this woman that, she was about 80 years old, and she had had a really dilapidated house because what we do is we rebuild houses, it's work, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's like home makeover in a way. And so Builders Care, the organization we were spotlighting, built this woman a home, and it just really got me emotional. And I remember just praying, it's like, Lord, if I just am able to carry their water, I just want to be a part of this. I just want to be a part of something this big. And so when I got the call, I didn't know that was who was calling me. Right. So finally they said, well, watch at that point, a lot of things were happening, and I was getting a lot of offers to do a lot of things, and most of it I just didn't want to deal with. But then I watched there was a 15-minute documentary. So I watched it, and all of a sudden the Building a Difference infographic comes on, and there it is. And I called them back, and I said, you cannot be serious. I'm like, my goodness. And I said, where do I sign? I'm all about
right.
This. I love your show. I can't believe it.
Wow.
And so right then, when you can see an absolute answer to prayer right there, it kind of gets you thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So
yeah,
God has been really good.
Yeah.
So how do we get into that? You just had to keep working. You got to keep working. You have to really allow yourself to be in places where that's going to be something that because when you're dealing in music, that's part of the whole deal is whether it be into fashion, into every segment of entertainment.
Right.
So you have to make yourself available, but you have to keep working. That's the
Yeah.
thing. You cannot become complacent. If you become complacent, there's all of these things won't happen. They
Right.
just won't. So you have to keep working. You have to keep studying. You have to keep doing these things in anything you do. And that's one thing that being in music and having the discipline that I've attained through that in business has really allowed me to go far
Yeah.
in not only my life but professionally and
Yeah.
well, personally and professionally. Yeah.
Well, then let me ask the question also from the opposite perspective. You
Okay.
having managed some people and stuff. What are one or two of the most common things that people want to spend a lot of energy or effort on that is a bit of a waste of time, or that you would cut out and have them focus on something else? Is there anything like that?
Um, well, you got to be very measured. I think that if people, if you've managed people, so you know about this, everything has got to be dedicated, pushed toward their career, right?
Right.
So things that are waste time or anything that would distract
Hmm.
from that. So you have to ask yourself the question: do I want to do this particular activity? Is it going to enhance anything? You know what I
Right.
mean? Or is what I'm doing, today or tomorrow, or what things that I've done, is it going to help my career at all?
Right.
It's like being an athlete, being a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Anything that's going to take away from what the end goal is, and the end result will be amazing success if you stay focused. And
Right.
that's a lot of times, I think artists get a bad rap, and I think a lot of times, particularly budding artists, get into this whole slacker mentality,
Right.
and there's none of that.
Right.
It's none of that. If that's an image that you're trying to project, fine, but that cannot be who you are.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, And here's the other thing about image, right? Be who you are, because at one point or another, that image is going to crack and crumble.
Hmm.
Be who you are, and you know, I'm telling you, good things come to those who work really, really hard and do it with a good heart.
Right. Right. Well, I think that what you're saying too, about being who you are is important because, like you're saying, once it's all gone, you need all of the effort that you have been putting into your career to be dual purpose of helping you be a better person as well.
Absolutely.
So when that's all
Because
gone,
what's the
all the work,
point?
yeah, you've put in all that work, and then you're just left with, you know,
Nothing.
right, right,
And how many times does that happen?
right,
How many times that happen?
100%.
I mean, my goodness, you can go down the list you know, of artists that have done this or that and the other thing that haven't been altogether great.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's all because they lost focus of tomorrow. It was too much living today.
Right. Right.
You know,
Well,
people say, "Oh, live today," or, live for the moment. I've never been good at living in the moment. I've made poor decisions living in the moment.
right. Right. Yeah. Well.
And I think there's nuances to that. And oh well, you gotta experience the moment. I experienced the moment. I
Right.
just know what's after that moment.
Right,
You know?
right. Consequences.
That's right.
Yes. Well, I just have a few rapid fire questions. I'm gonna ask them. They're pretty short
Well,
questions,
I
but
want to I want to
yes.
touch
Uh-huh.
base on this one
Yeah.
really really quick. The other thing about music is that if it's allowed to, so for example, I had up two divisions. So I'm a business person too.
Hmm.
I had up two divisions at a company called the Mize Group, and many of my clients are NFL, MLB, NBA
Hmm.
teams, as well as we have on the other side of the house we have healthcare, and there's people we place into clinics and hospitals, and all sorts of different things. So we're covering the gamut. But what's really important is when we get down to brass tacks. I've been so I represent candidates and clients, right? So people going into jobs and the clients that are going to hire them, for
Hmm.
example, right? I've been repped by good managers and bad managers, good agents and bad agents,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what is it about that experience that I can translate here? Well, I have to hold myself to an excellence. I have to hold myself higher than someone normal. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's when you're on a stage or a platform, you have to hold yourself, and your word has got to be good. So the point I'm trying to make is is you can use your experience in music and your hard work and your tenacity for other things besides the entertainment business. Okay, or Christian music or whatever,
Right.
television. You can use this to really impact and really be an effective business person, because my goodness, a musician or an artist, a real one on a mission, are some of the most focused people you'll ever meet.
Mm-hmm.
So as that translates into different things, use that. Use that. And and when the music stops, and it will, you have to be able to use your experiences to not only make yourself a better person, but everyone around you better as well.
That's great.
That's the main thing. That is the main crux of the whole deal. And for any musician who plans on being a band leader, if you're not trying to make that band better in terms of how you are as a person, what you're doing as a leader, then you're missing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're missing it.
And if I could add to that too, not only the people in your band, but just anyone else that you happen to come across.
Absolutely.
I've been shocked how many times people that I didn't expect at all to help me in my career, 5, 10 years down the road. I did something for them back when I didn't have to,
right.
And it pays off in long run. You just never know. Never know.
You never know.
Burn no bridges.
And the more you do it, my goodness, the more amazing it gets.
Yeah, there was this guy sang the song "Penguin in a Floaty," and then it was years later. Yeah, and we ended up doing a interview and stuff. It was great.
Pretty cool. I love that song. That's why he's a penguin. I love that song. There's a guy. He's the CEO of a company called Edge Alliance, and that is literally his favorite song.
That's funny. That's funny.
That's true.
You got the perfect voice to it, man. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, yep, that was the only guy in the world that could have done that song. That's funny.
Thank you, man. I was listening to it the other day. I love it. I do. I just got a new car, and it's got this really cool surround sound system in it.
Right.
And man, it sounds bad in my car, man. Like bumping Penguin in a floaty.
All right. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Let me just ask a few more rapid fire questions. Take as long as you want for the answers, but 3 most important albums to own for anybody.
Oh my goodness. 3 most important albums to own. My goodness. I should have thought about this. I think Zeppelin's first one.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. The Zeppelin's first one.
We can come back around to it too.
Hold on. Okay. I'm gonna get it. Zeppelin's first one. B.B. King's first one.
There we go.
And maybe a little Miles Davis, his first one.
All right. Thanks for that. Yeah.
The first ones, man.
Yes. All right. Cool. Favorite podcast, YouTube channels, magazines, wherever you get media. Do you have any favorites of those?
Anything that Learn Piano Live puts out.
Absolutely.
I eat up.
That's a given.
I love it. That's a given. Man, there's so many out there. There's so many. One thing that I like about podcasts is there's a freedom to it. So I don't know, maybe you tend to get a more, I don't know, honest.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I like the podcast. There's several that I listen to, and being in this political season that we're in, Lord have mercy.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
So well, yeah.
Sometimes I got to turn it off, and I just got to put on some gospel music.
Yes. Well, yeah, and to give the international audience who are not paying attention to U.S. politics some background story here. We literally have our last 2 candidates for president are literally, actually, unbelievably a reality TV show host and perhaps one of the most dishonest and secretive politicians that our nation has ever seen. So In light of that, I know you all at home have heard me ask this question of a lot of different people, but never in this season. This is the first time I'm going to ask if you had to choose one person to be the benevolent dictator in the United States, who would it be?
Oh, it'd be you, man. I would vote for you,
I would.
hands down. In fact, I'm gonna write you in.
There we
Jamin
go.
Collar. That's it. That's what I'm gonna write in.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna write in.
goodness.
I would gladly serve at the pleasure of Jamin Collar.
Oh my. All right. Well, that's the first time we've ever had that answer.
I would. I would. I think you'd be a great choice.
Uh,
In fact, you know what? That's what I'm doing. I'm
I,
gonna write it in.
I'm gonna have a penguin and a floaty as my vice president. That's awesome.
At least state.
Right. Okay. Here's another one.
That was a good one. I
Okay.
don't care who you are.
What movie or movies can you most easily quote from right now?
Tombstone.
Tombstone. Give me
Yeah.
a one line. Do you know a one
Oh,
line?
there's so many. Well, I'm your Huckleberry.
I
Months ago.
gotta watch that. I've never seen that one.
Oh my, I love that movie.
Oh,
I
awesome.
quote the whole thing. I can't even watch it anymore. It's whole Wyatt Earp and the whole Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, and I'm
That
into that Western stuff. I just love it.
that's awesome. What books or what books should everyone read?
Oh, I think Catcher in the Rye would be one. Um, I wrote. I think I read it a little too young because they give it to you when you're like freshman in high school.
Right.
And but I like that book. But you gotta come at it from a perspective of, you know, this is the way a lot of people feel.
Right.
Why do they feel that way?
Huh.
That kind of thing.
All right.
I like that book. Um, but man, I tell you what, you just got to go listen to some. After I picked that thing up the other day because I was looking at a quote. I was trying to get a quote for a friend of mine,
Hmm.
and and I'm like, man, I need to go listen to some gospel music because this kid he's depressed, man. Lord have mercy. But yeah, so that's a good one. I
Yeah.
think. Not sure if it's a kid's book, but
Yeah.
all right. Um, I don't know, man. I like Nabokov, and I don't know. There's all sorts of different authors. So
All right. Yeah. Then last question: what is the best definition that you could come up with of success, and who do you know who embodies it most?
hmm. Well, success is different to a lot of people, but for me, it's if I work hard and I'm able to touch other people and to help other people. It's one of the reasons why I love the Mize group. If I'm able to do that, then I've done pretty good. You know, if I can help influence someone to make a better decision, to be better in their in their life, or provide some sort of experience of my own to show a guidepost to them, then I think I've done pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great note to end on. I want to thank you again for being so generous with your time, and we all have links and show notes in all the descriptions. And I love you. Thanks for
I
joining us
love
this
you
time.
too, man.
All right. See you
Thanks
later.
for having me. I just love it.